Welcome back. Subito, Inter, and their winless streak at 3, prevailing 5-2 over Roma. We're going to break it all down for you. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got Jay here with me. Jay, I'm going to cut straight to it. People want to hear your thoughts on the biggest news of the week. DeMarco finally shaves his head. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no joke. That was the first thing that I noticed upon turning on the match. I was like, hey, this motherfucker finally did it. He's finally bald instead of dyeing his or bleaching his few remaining strands, this peroxide blonde. Not that it didn't suit him if he had a fuller head of hair, but, you know, he don't. So uh, he made the bold move, get it, to finally to go clean. And it kind of spoke to me, not because I'm bald or balding. In fact, I can't relate at all as someone with a just unspeakably good hairline, which has not removed or receded, retreated, no ground forfeited so much as a millimeter in my 36 years of life, if you even know what a millimeter is. But it resounded with me because it felt like he was kind of communicating time to get serious. Maybe I'm looking too much into a relatively meaningless gesture of a haircut. I mean, I got a haircut myself 3 hours ago, but you don't see me making any gestures of it. But for some reason,
It feels like a fresh
Demarco's
start, though.
haircut, yeah. For some reason, Demarco's haircut just seemed to speak to me as if he was saying, "Enough. It's time to get down to business. No more bullshit. No more like bleaching my hair and trying to look cool and all this crap. Like we've just fucked up our third consecutive World Cup. We are on the verge of fucking up another Scudetto. Enough is enough. Time to get serious." And yeah, I didn't mean to spend 5 minutes talking about DeMarco's hair or lack of, but it, it resonated with me immediately.
Also, he just looks sharp. This is a good look for him. Bald is beautiful. He pulls it off well.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that.
I'm trying. I haven't dyed my hair blonde yet, but maybe I should as part of my DeMarco life cycle. So I don't think we can start anywhere other than the return of Lautaro when you're talking about making your presence felt. I mean, 1 minute into the match, making a clever run across the face of goal to get on the end of the Turan ball and score. I mean, this podcast will be the first podcast to make jokes. I can hear Irfan calling him Pisa man, Salernitana man. But I mean, we have all the evidence we need now, right? About how
The
important
tripla
this
of
guy is to
Cremonese,
conqueror of Cremonese.
the
But
assassin
I
of
mean,
Ascoli.
but I mean, like he did it. Like he willed this team to victory, and we'll talk about some of the other important storylines from the match. But like, I think we really have to start there because we had no chance of winning a Scudetto unless this guy returned from injury in form. And for him to make this much of a splash in his first game back, it gives you hope as we inch our way further to the goal. So, thoughts on Lautaro's first performance back from the injury? I know you're going to complain about his third goal not being well struck, or second goal, our third goal not being well struck, but what can you do?
Yeah, so let's start there. In fantastic Lautaro fashion, he somehow kind of scuffed the ball into the ground, and then the ball ended up going into the dead center of net, traveling at about 3 kilometers per hour, and somehow managed to still score. But you know what? Let's not let's not let's not take anything away from him, because everything you're saying is 100% factual. For all Altaro's faults, which I don't think are really debatable, and we've gone over them at length. No one here is really, we've debated, but no one here has denied the things that he is good at and the level that he is capable of. And maybe there is an argument to say that, or at least I believe personally, that he might not be at the level to win his team a Champions League in the way that like a Benzema might, or a Cristiano Ronaldo might, or those young phenoms from PSG might, but he's still good enough to overcome the overwhelming majority of obstacles within this competition of Serie A. Uh, and that's not to disrespect Serie A. That's to say that you know Lautaro maybe is just that iota or just that small 5% short of the true 10 out of 10 players, but he's otherwise managed to provide the steel, the metal to take the team over the line. And you said it, he willed the team to victory. The impact was uh, immediate, and you could see even Turam, like the way he just attacked Ndika immediately from the first minute. No conservatism, no fear, no safety, just no concern whether it was minute 1, minute 50, or minute 90. He just picked up the ball and just ran at Ndika and ran towards goal, straight for the goal. No, none of this starting off slowly or, let's kind of get into our flow kind of shit. He just went for it. Latara made that signature near post darting run, latched onto the ball and smashed it home. So it was a fantastic Tula goal, as they say. And you mentioned, well, I think it's important to mention the psychological impact that he was able to kind of provide to the team as well. The chasing, the involvement, the closing down, the fighting. These are all things that are constant with Arturo, even if sometimes he struggles to get things right. The effort is always there, and that's something that you know we can make jokes about his finishing, and I certainly have. Many people have made jokes about his finishing or his big game record or whatever, but you know, one can only try, and the result can vary. But with Lautaro, the trying is not optional. The trying is not voluntary. The trying is not uh, ever lacking. So you have to give him immense credit for that. I want to quickly, before we talk about Turam's mini resurrection or the remainder of the game, I just wanted to mention though, like the first 10 minutes, I thought were really strong from both teams. Obviously we started really hot and got that first goal in 1 minute, and then we were on the ascendancy and playing fast and playing hard football. Roma responded in kind, and although there were no, well, I don't recall there being very many other big chances in the first 10, 15 minutes. There was a tension there, but not in the kind of like in the kind of like, Milan, Napoli, just shit fest of like a game where both teams are too tense to really play properly. But I mean like in an entertaining spectacle kind of way. There was like a level of attention and alertness that both teams played with, sharpness, and that's what I mean when I say tension. And that was present in the first 15 minutes. So I thought the first quarter of the game was really entertaining in that regard. Um, Also, just want to say quickly that the although the Roma goal came, and just on that part, Demarco was a bit slow to cover the run of Wrench, the number 2 from Roma, uh, after finding himself somehow on the right hand flank. Çalhanoğlu's goal was equally as important because in the last 2 games against Atalanta and Fiorentina, where we dropped points, we scored first, and against Fiorentina, we also scored in the first minute of the game from Pio. So, you know, this could have been another false dawn for us with the early Lautaro goal. It felt like a curse had been broken. It felt like, oh, a captain's back. We're back on form. San Siro's pumping. The players, the fans, everyone's in a good vibe, and we're kind of helping each other through what is a difficult period, especially for the Italians, obviously. Um, but it could have been a false dawn had we not responded to the Roma equalizer, and getting that goal just before the halftime whistle in that fashion was, I think, maybe just as important as the first goal from Lautaro in the first minute. It was really like that big kind of moment of magic that we needed to help continue the belief into the second half and avoid like this kind of second half malaise that we've seen in previous games against in the last stretch of games that we've had.
Yeah, this isn't the most nuanced point I'll ever make, but the Hakan shot saved the Scudetto in many ways. Like, this was feeling an awful lot like our first reverse fixture against Roma at the Olimpico, where it was Bonnie who scored early there, and then we were just overwhelmed by this wave of Roman pressure. And there was a string there. There was a window in the match where we were under siege. We didn't really have the ball. Roma were making several attacks. Milan had, what was it, a great header that Summer had to palm away. Like, the field was tilted towards our goal, and they were really turning the screw. And when Mancini scored the goal, not only did it feel like it was coming, but it felt like, oh boy, here we go again. This is the same script as in previous matches. We've seen this the past few weeks where we score a goal almost as early as you can score a goal. We immediately sit back a little bit because it's natural over the course of a game. You're not going to dominate a team for 90 minutes. And we don't really have an answer when we have to play these compact defensive games. So the difference in going in at the half tied up at 1 with that doubt creeping in, I know it was creeping in for me as a fan, versus Hakan scoring the goal of the season and us having a lead and this renewed belief, it was the difference in the game. And then you come out in the second half and you dominate because you have all this new confidence. You're able to get a couple of early goals. And once again, we're just stuck laughing at Gasparini and how his team folds every time he plays Inter. So that Hakan goal will go down for me as this kinda Scudetto moment, assuming we don't bottle this thing and we get the job done. Like, a just absolutely huge goal, especially with the backdrop of everything that happened last week too, with the players, going through the ringer with the national team and all that. It's like we really needed something to go our way, and to create a goal like that out of nothing, it was just a huge moment in the match for us
And
to.
yeah, it was so
Right.
emphatic as well. You mentioned like the overall shitty atmosphere following, the Bastoni stuff and Italy's capitulation and this kind of thing, combined with the period of Inter just looking like they might collapse, in this Scudetto run in. But not only was the goal big, but the kind of goal it was significant as well, because you score a banger like that from what 32 meters or something. You blow the roof of the stadium off. The fans are up in the air, up in the seats, standing up and jumping up and down, screaming, singing, and that makes a huge difference to the mood as well. It wasn't just some like scrappy goal, um, or just even like a routine goal that we pieced together from a bit of teamwork to score some individual super goal like that. It makes a difference.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, like, that's my other big takeaway from this match. It's how the players responded to the disappointments of, multiple players in this team failing to qualify for the World Cup. And, we all know what happens with the Italian core. Hopefully, you're able to check out the Subito episode I did with Sterling talking about it a little bit. But when you look at the players who are most impacted by that, Barella was incredible in this game. He set up the corner that Thuram eventually scored on by running back possession in the midfield out of nowhere, and he had that somewhat fortunate fifth goal, but still, Barella never scores goals, and there he was involved in our play. Bastoni had a really nice game. It was great seeing him have a moment with the fans when he was subbed out. And I know he wasn't part of the squad that's endured it, but I know Cherby's feeling it for the World Cup qualification as well. And what a steady hand it was having him back there. And even though Roma scored 2 goals, I just felt at ease. I felt like a kid tucked into bed underneath a warm blanket with a Cherby in my back line. He was excellent in this game. So for many people, myself included, it was just I was terrified how this team was going to respond to yet another disappointment. And for them to bounce back, it's just full marks. We needed this so badly. And then, you get a little bit of good news yesterday with Napoli popping Milan. You inch yourself another point towards the Scudetto, and suddenly we feel very much in the driver's seat again.
Yeah, absolutely. You made a good point about Roma putting us under siege for a while. You know, they had a lot of success with this kind of with this diagonal play, kind of pulling us around the pitch diagonally with this lopsided approach where they'd build up play and then kind of switch to the other flank with a fast diagonal ball, and it caught us out. Uh, that's how they got some joy down the right hand flank. I think Dumfries had a difficult night. and yeah, that was personified by Marlon, who is like a whole 15 centimeters shorter than him, somehow just outsmarting, out positioning him, out muscling him in the air to win that header, which brought out a great save from Sommer of all people. So, but there was an urgency in the defense that was definitely missing from the previous weeks. I'm not sure if others would agree, but I felt there was a sense of urgency and tenacity and resilience and just fighting spirit from the defense as a whole. And I don't know if it's entirely down to Achirby himself, but even if there was not a ton of like individual highlight reel goal saving tackles from Achirby or anything, I thought he put in a masterful performance, even though we conceded the two goals. And I still think he is probably our best centre back, you know, by some considerable margin. And it is the old fashioned centre back things that he has that someone like, Bastoni is just yet to develop, if he ever will develop it. And it's like the simple things like winning the headers, even if they're not that heavily contested, you got to hoover up every single one. I haven't checked the stats, but I'm pretty sure that if you went back and looked, you would see that Achirby dominated the air. You would see that he probably won most of his challenges, and you would see that he was tidy on the ball. That's as much as you can ask for, but it's the former things. It's winning the challenges, making the space your own, and warding away danger before it becomes dangerous. That really ensures a sense of security in the back line. And as mentioned, despite the goals, despite the Roma pressure, it felt secure, you know, even with that and with that extra effort or with that extra kind of heart that we saw from the defensive unit. Uh, Overall, it made for a pleasing defensive performance, again, despite the goals.
Yeah, this is slightly off topic, but the smiling guy, I can't really figure out if I like him or not. Maybe it's the bald head speaking to me. Sometimes I watch him play and like this guy feels like you're run of the mill Serie A striker who just happens to have better movement and mobility than most instead of being like this big lumbering more. But every time I watch him play, he's dangerous. Like he contributes to goals, and he's been the best forward in the league since he joined Roma. So looks like an impressive player. And the fact we were mostly able to deal with him with a pretty immobile center back in a Cherby, like I love a Cherby. I wish we had more in those legs of his. I wish we could squeeze another season out of him. I don't think we can unless he wants to be like a plays once a month kind of guy. Who knows what he wants at this point in his career? I'd love to see him come back if he can take some limited role. And I wish we could sign a version of him that was 10 years younger because he they just don't make players like him anymore. Like I having him as your central center back is honestly the perfect player. The other point I guess we can talk about is the rediscovery of Thuram's form. He gets the goal with France midweek. I want to say it was against Colombia in a friendly, and then all of a sudden he's scoring for Inter again. And does his Inter form have something to do with the return of Lautaro? Well, it's hard to argue otherwise. It- I remember talking with you and Antonio about this, about how, hey, maybe the Lautaro Thuram connection's a bit overblown. And it's not like Lautaro assisted Thuram on the goal he scored. But still, I mean, it's hard to deny that this is the best he's looked in months for us. His first goal in like what 9 matches, and for him to feel like he's finally rediscovering his early season form here, maybe going to finish the season strong. Like it's hard not to look at that and go, "Hey, that's directly correlated to Lautaro returning."
I think it was to do with the fact that there were a couple of French rappers in the stands that he got to take photos with after the game. But no, I joke. There's obviously a massive correlation there with Lautaro returning. And I think things just lined up perfectly for us in the fact that we had this, well, what is nothing short of a disaster with Italy failing to qualify for the World Cup. A lot of, I mean, I've seen a lot of discourse online about, the inter block basically being weak and not up to scratch to lead the Azzurri the way that previous Juventus blocks have been. And then You've got into fans pushing back against that, saying that when Italy failed to qualify for the previous two World Cups, that they were also, the BBC backline with Buffon, Bonucci, Barzali, Chiellini, etc., um, and what have you. So that aside, it's been a shit few weeks for Inter and Italy. Let's be real, and the core of Inter is Italy. It's Barella, it's Di Marco, it's Bastoni, and to an extent, Acerbi. And all these things kind of came to a head here with the return of Lautaro when Inter were reeling, when Italy was reeling following these disasters and a potential, uh, Scudetto disaster on the horizon if Inter were unable to arrest the slide, keeping in mind that I think we were one win in the last 5 games heading into this. And I think we met the right opponent at the right time. And I'm not going to put a damper on this, but let me ask you, would we have resounded or rebounded in this way if the opponent was Milan or Juventus or Roma, led by none other than Gasperini, just the perfect opponent at the perfect time?
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason why we could have some confidence going to this match. Just knowing that, hey, we have Gasparini's number. We own this guy. He's beaten us like once in the past 8 years at this point. And yeah, I mean, it kind of was the perfect storm, the perfect situation for us. But that's fine. I mean, sometimes you have to rise to the moment, and that's what we did in this match. So I'm not going to sit here and complain. And I mean, you know our record against Milan and Juve and Napoli recently. Anytime you see them on the fixture list, you have to think it's a bad opportunity for us because we're not going to respond to it. But thankfully, we're through that part of the fixture list, man. And you look forward to the matches we have left, and they're not daunting. And we now understand what it's going to take to win a Scudetto. We now know who the main rival is. Now that Napoli have kind of emerged from the pack and put Milan to bed. So we know what the situation is, and I guess maybe we can do a couple seconds there. Just your thoughts on kind of Napoli being the final hurdle for us to climb from a Scudetto challenger standpoint. We have very similar fixture lists. We have a lot of common opponents. We have this built-in lead. It's a very straightforward ask of us right now.
Firstly, massive disrespect to Milan won't be tolerated on this podcast. Uh, but, I'm as happy as anyone that Napoli beat Milan. I was surprised to see so many Inter fans, Inter people kind of not wanting Napoli to win. They consider Napoli to be the more dangerous of the two. And, for them, they were like, oh, I want Milan to win because I'm more confident that Milan won't win the remaining games and whatnot because they've got a harder schedule maybe with Juventus and Atalanta and so on. But yeah, fuck that. Napoli were first of all, Napoli were behind Milan in terms of points, so them leapfrogging them is a good thing. Any loss that Milan takes is a good thing, and I actually think that Napoli's run in is quite a bit easier than ours, despite there being, I think, 3 shared opponents in Lazio, Parma, and Como. Uh, Bologna too, actually 4. But I don't know, Napoli's uh, lineup of remaining games seemed shockingly easy to me when I actually took the time to inspect it today. I was thinking to myself, should I be more worried than I am? Which is not really, but I mean, I feel like Napoli's hit a rich vein of form. I think this victory against Milan was their 5th consecutive league win in a row, maybe 6th. And as mentioned, they seem to be heading into a pretty easy stretch of games. So, what is your? I know I completely failed to answer your question, but what is your kind of? How seriously do you rate the chances of Napoli?
I'm feeling good. When you look at our fixture list, we have one match that's I could see going either way, which is this upcoming match against Como. The rest of this fixture list should be something we take care of routinely. I mean, you've got Kyrie at home, who I believe they're safe. I'll have to double check that, but that's not a tough opponent. You've got teams like Torino and Parma. Like these are teams I would expect us to beat. And yeah, I know we just had a horrible run in form, and we were kind of fighting it. But if what we were against Roma is who we are for the rest of the season, I have no concerns. Even if Napoli wins out, we have margin for error here. So I'm feeling confident, and maybe we can use this as an opportunity to talk about the Como match because Como was an interesting puzzle piece. I mean, we and Napoli, as you said, both play them. We have a great record against Como since Fabregas took over. We obviously had the draw 0-0 in the first round of the Copa semifinal, but let's be real, no one was trying to win that game. That was like a mutual understanding of let's just get out of here with a draw and we'll figure this out later. But if you look at Como's record, I mean, they've taken some big scalps. They've took points from Juve twice this year. I want to say they took points from Napoli in their first fixture against them. I mean, they're a team on paper you should be afraid of. And if as I'm looking at Napoli's fixture list, I'm trying to identify if a place Napoli might drop points. I'm definitely circling their game against Como. But how do you feel about us playing this team? Yeah, I'm laughing because Como has gotten so much airtime in the press recently because they're kind of the epitome of what people think is wrong with this league, and that this is a team that doesn't have a single Italian player in its side that regularly plays. It's a bunch of foreigners who are coming in, and Fabregas, a foreign manager, purchased. And they're, I don't want to say rolling through the league, that's disingenuous, but they're clearly fighting for trophies. They're fighting for European places. So it's just interesting seeing all the, to use an American term, Monday morning quarterbacking of what Como is and how they've gone from a team that receives a good amount of praise for their performances against big clubs to now the problem with Italian football. But anyway, getting somewhat back on track, we've had a lot of success against this team. I think we've had a lot of success about this against this team because of the way they play. And you know how Fabregas wants to play. It's he wants to be on the ball. He wants to feel like he's in control of matches. And when you have more talent than your opponent and you want to play a similar way to them, it's kind of easy to hold your hands, keep them at arm's length, and not let them get too comfortable. So, how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, you said it. I'm relaxed, but at the same time wary. I do think Como are due for an improved performance against us. I mean, they have actually the best defense in the league. Interestingly, they've conceded the fewest goals in the entire league with just 22, which is two better than Milan in second place and four better than us in third. Uh, so I know there's this kind of tendency to consider Como this, I don't know, Arsenal light or something as the love child of Cesc Fabregas and the way he likes to play with his modern philosophy and progressive approach to football. But they are a defensively sound team. That's first and foremost because you can't help but respect that defensive record, right? They have drawn a lot of games though, including one yesterday against Udinese, where I will admit I did not watch a single minute of that game, but the stats seem to just suggest that Udinese had more of the ball and bigger and better chances. So, they're not yet possessing this team of destiny style swagger that can take a small team to serious trophy contention. I'm talking like Wolfsburg in 0809 winning the Bundesliga, or, you know, perhaps a more extreme example is Leicester winning the Premier League in 2015-16. But you get my point. They do have some of that maybe Atalanta level of what do you want to call it, of X factor that can enable a small team to play beyond its limits, but or to play above its station. Saying that with as much respect as possible, but they're not yet in the conversation where you'd expect them to like really, really reliably challenge for and beat some of the direct rivals like us, like Napoli, like Milan, like Juventus. Even if they have taken points off Juventus multiple times, right? They're still um, they lost the game to Milan, they lost to us, and the way they've lost games to us and Milan is notable as well. So You couple that with the um with the amount of draws they've had, and yeah, I guess I don't think they're quite there at the level, so we should beat them. I consider them, I guess, on par with like kind of Atalanta or Lazio, even though they're much ahead of these two teams this season. But I think the challenge should be of the same level.
It's interesting you say that because when you look at Como, you can argue their performance and like their underlying numbers and all that point to them being the second best team in Italy. I mean, you talked about their defensive record, but they're also one of the highest scoring teams in the league. And you look at the results they've had against some of these bigger sides, and yeah, I know they lost to us, they lost to Roma, they lost to Milan, whatever else. But I mean, they've beaten and they've drawn some really good teams, or at least by Serie A standards, some good teams. So it's hard to quite crack them. It feels like maybe they're a year away, and if they can somehow hold this project together and keep Fabregas and keep Paz, maybe I don't want to say they have a Scudetto challenge in them, but maybe they'll firmly be a Champions League team next season. Whereas for now, it looks like they're might struggle to get there because they've just drawn too many games, and their draw against Udinese was kind of a backbreaker the other day. So I don't know, but it's hard to deny Fabregas has done a really impressive job. I'm fully expecting someone to try and poach this guy this summer. Obviously, we were unsuccessful in doing so last summer. Kind of wish we had him, but that's a different conversation. So I guess prediction for the Como match. I want to feel confident. I want to have some belief when you think about how well we just played against Roma, coupled with our historical success against Como. But you always have those niggling doubts in your mind as an Inter fan of like what's going to go wrong next. So it's kind of tough to call, but I'm gonna keep the confidence. I'm gonna predict a victory, and if I'm gonna predict a victory, I have to predict a Lautaro goal. So give me a 1-0 with a Lautaro winner.
Yeah, I'll take that. I think that's a good pick. I think it'll be a tough game away to them. Despite the Copper match being a vastly different situation where both teams didn't really want to give anything more than like a 6 out of 10 effort. Especially us, we didn't want to give more than like a 4 out of 10. But you get my point. This game will be different. Como will be smarting after dropping points against Udinese, and their gap against Juve has evaporated now. Now Juve are just 1 point behind Como in fifth place and breathing down their necks for that final Champions League spot. And lo and behold, of course, destiny would have it that it is us that must essentially give fucking Juventus a Champions League spot. But it is one evil that must be done on our way to winning the Scudetto, then so be it.
Yeah, I
I'll take the 1-0 as well. Yeah.
l- let's be real. There's not a scenario where Juve does not somehow, some way end up in a Champions League spot. I've been doing this long enough to know how this stuff works out. It doesn't matter who the opponent is, doesn't matter who the manager is. Some way, somehow, these guys will get hot towards the end of the year, maybe a refereeing decision their way. They'll win three of their last four. Como will lose some game they're not supposed to lose. And Juve will sneak into that fourth spot. It's written in the stars. That's how it works in this league.
No question about that.
All right. Well, we'll wrap up there. Miko, disappointing. I thought you were going to finally make your return to the podcast. Shameful. Uh, Jay, anything you'd like to say to Miko before we get out of here?
I'm simply disgusted by what I've seen. I think the conduct is abhorrent. The the commitment is not existent, and quite frankly, uh, I think he's on his second and final strike.
All I'll say is Miko is not our Lautaro. We don't perform best with Miko here, and this team doesn't need Miko to get the job done. So take that. I'm just kidding. We miss you, buddy. All right, Jay, do us the honor.
The irony in giving all this Miko airtime without even mentioning Irfan.
Who's Irfan?
Former professional podcaster Irfan. Uh,
I'm
while
not
I'm on
familiar with.
this, I've no idea who that is. Sorry. Look, I wanted to give a shout out actually to Sterling. I thought last episode was fantastic. You guys spoke at length about the Italy situation and some really interesting takes regarding like the potential. I mean, the fact that like France and other European teams are dominated by players of African heritage, whereas Italy isn't. You know, there's something to be said there in terms of how well these guys perform, and Italy's somehow inability to get any from transitioning from the youth levels. Where in Italy is actually doing really well, by the way, uh, to the first team. So I thought that was a really interesting episode, and I encourage people to go and check it out.
Thank you, sir. You'll always get me riled up talking about the Italian national team, and never a tall task. But all right, let's call it there. Jay, please do the honor.
Uh, Forza Inter. Let's just let's just get one more until the end of the season. It's going to be one more. But this is the bet we made for ourselves. So just one more.
That's right. One more.